Allman in the Morning, Common Sense Radio.
Sorry about that.
We were grooving.
Oh, yeah. we were really grooving. Sorry.
Good morning, you bunch of drunks.
So, yeah. Yesterday, at this hearing, I basically checked out right about the time this bozo, what is his name? Is that Hakeem, whatever his name is?
Cedric Richmond.
Oh, that's another guy. Mm-hmm. Right about the time Cedric Richmond decided to ask this blockbuster question in the 12-hour-long hearing with Jeff Sessions. Check it out.
How many African Americans do you have on your senior staff?
I do not have a senior staff member at this time that's an African American.
Out of all,
I would note in Alabama, I participated in recommending an African American judge, and I've had judges.
Okay,
before.
and at this point, I'm going, okay, this was about the time I left Menards with my Christmas lights. So that was my first task. I can't remember whether I was it was before I went into Menards or when I came back out of Menards, because I had to grab some stuff because I helped put some stuff in for my mom last night. But it's a long story. But task after task after task. That was about the time I popped into out of Menards. So I was putting stuff on I got some new Christmas lights, and this time I got the big bulbs.
Ooh,
I'm not messing around with the little bulbs. I got the big bulbs this time around. And so anyway, then I'm going, wait a minute. I thought when I went into Menards, they were talking about Russia or Papalopoulos or Kizligliak or whatever his name is. I'm thinking, what is that? They finally got to one interesting part, and that was, okay, so are you going to appoint a special counsel? And when it comes to the Clintons thing. So that was mildly interesting. But this stuff about the race stuff, and then Chris Matthews, he interviewed Hakeem Jeffries, who was there, and Hakeem Jeffries also asked some racially charged question or whatever it was. And here's what Matthews asked him after that. Cut number 18 here.
Did you notice anything sort of ethnic about his attitude in answering your questions? Something that rattled him? He seemed disturbed that it was you asking him the questions.
Ethnic about his attitude? Like, what exactly does that mean? Meanwhile, while we're just talking about race, why not? Always great to talk about race on the radio. But anyway, did you notice that when you talk about privilege and you talk about people who are privileged, and we've been having to deal with people who are pointing fingers at white people and saying, you have white privilege, you have to check your white privilege at the door. But what do you call it when you're a black basketball player with UCLA, a basketball team? First of all, you're playing in China. You're traveling the world, so there's privilege A. Mm-hmm. Then you're out shopping at a Louis Vuitton store. That's privilege B, because you're not playing basketball. You're able to kind of wander around shopping. And actually, then you decide you're not going to shop. You're going to shoplift. You're going to steal. Right?
Nice.
So, and again, 3 black basketball players from UCLA in China. Privilege number 3 is you feeling that you are entitled to free Louis Vuitton items from a Chinese Louis Vuitton store. So that you're already assuming that whatever is theirs is yours, apparently, because after all, they're Chinese and they don't deserve it, and you do. I don't know what the mindset that goes into shoplifting is, because these guys obviously have all the money they want. And in fact, this Ball character, his dad, who I think is very entertaining, by the way. What's his name? Javon?
I disagree.
Well, whatever. But it is very wealthy because he's a former basketball. So these guys have money.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Then what happens is you get arrested in China, right?
Yeah.
And it's while the president is there. And the president, by the way, for the first year of his term and then also before he was elected, is called a racist by most black liberals. Mm-hmm. And he's automatically assumed to be a racist, and anybody who supports him is a racist. So 3 black basketball players from UCLA get arrested in China. They're in jail. And in China, I don't know what they do to people who shoplift or steal, but the penalties are fairly harsh in that kind of environment, that kind of regime. And guess who manufactures the release of 3 privileged UCLA black basketball players? Well. It's the white devil himself.
Here's another beauty.
Donald J. Trump, the white racist Satan, Donald J. Trump. Suddenly, his actions result in these 3 individuals landing in Los Angeles yesterday free. Mm. And by the way, is there anybody talking about that?
No. Nope.
Is there anybody? What about the people who said that President Trump should have been much harder on China and screamed at China publicly about this and about that? How do you think that would have worked out for the 3 black basketball players if President Trump went over there and started lighting forest fires in China and talking to these guys? And also, is there going to be any mention of this by anybody on the left? And is anybody going to bring up how President Obama, who is a guy who's apparently just this very open, Nobel Peace Prize winning guy, just left somebody to die over North Korea? Now, granted, North Korea is a tougher nut to crack than China. It would be easier to probably secure the release of a person from China than it would be from North Korea. But my overreaching point here is this. When the basketball players speak today, which apparently they're going to speak, will there be any thanks to the great white Satan? Mm-hmm. I don't know.
There better be.
Yeah.
There better be.
That's
my gut would say no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe because they'll figure out a way, and I'll be curious to watch how the media covers this particular event and the aftermath, because believe me, had Barack Obama secured the freedom of 3 UCLA basketball players, they would have to put out another edition of GQ magazine in the same month with Obama's picture on it as Person of the Year.
And the session stuff would be blown out of the water. That wouldn't even be an important story anymore.
Oh, yeah.
It'd be all about Obama.
It would be all about how President Obama is the great angel of freedom and how he swooped in. And look at how look at how the rest of the world loves Barack Obama. And how much they love him, and how his relationships with all these other countries and the worst, but not a peep in the mainstream media about the release of these 3 from China. Now, keep in mind, too, you talk about privilege. Now let's move on to something in the inner city. And let's talk about what happens to a black inner city individual who shoplifts. They get arrested. They get fined. They go to jail, and they wind up in a court system that will never let go of them, it seems. Let's put it this way. Why don't you try going to a Louis Vuitton store today and stealing something and see what happens to you? Because believe me, what will happen to you did not happen and won't still happen to 3 black privileged UCLA basketball players. So much for that. Hey, Dave, thanks for calling the show. How you doing?
Hey, Jamie. I like how you're still calling them UCLA basketball players. Really sad that you don't even hear anything from the university. They're going to remain on the team. What an embarrassment. They didn't need wasn't food, and just the risk of long-term prison sentence in China that they can walk away and get nothing, and then greeted at the airport by a ton of fans cheering them on.
Yeah, really, you know what? That's so interesting. You point that out. It's a great catch on your part. That you talk about privilege. I'm still calling them UCLA basketball players.
And they still probably will be playing for UCLA because, we put athletes above everything else. And it's really sad. This generation has no heroes. They'll talk about athletes, but when we grew up, right, wrong, or indifferent, we had, characters on TV, Roy Rogers, Gene Autry, John Wayne. You had, just this symbolic message of good versus evil. But when you ask these young people now, they have no heroes. And here's one of their heroes, a thief that has, more opportunities than most of these inner city kids or even my kids will ever have.
Yeah.
And he's a hero coming back from China as a thief.
That's amazing that they greeted them that way. That's incredible how they embarrassed the country, the USA. They embarrassed UCLA. They embarrassed the rest of the basketball team. They embarrassed their families. And they're greeted as heroes when they get down into when they win their plane lands. That's amazing, Dave. I appreciate it. Can't wait to see how this is covered today.